right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Master of the Universe podcast. We are here, myself, CJ, Karam, and Joey the Rage Cage. How you doing over there?
I'm raging and Cajun, man. The raging Cajun.
Ah, shit, mon chéri. You ever want to know? You want to have some loving time? I
Oh
forgot her
shit!
name. What was that chick's name on X-Men? Rogue.
Yeah, say that's the old Cajun fucking Gambit getting his ass over, calling her Sherry. Speaking of over ass motherfuckers, before we went on air, you started saying some funny ass shit. That what was it? I stopped collecting micro machines.
Oh, well, Joey, it's I'm kind of done with dinosaurs for now. I had a good, whole year of just showing pictures of dinosaurs I bought from Jurassic Park and describing the different names of the breeds and species. But now I'm back on the Hot Wheels cars.
I'm over here talking about micro machines for the 90s. I was like, what the fuck was the bullshit? I was like, oh, yeah, that's pretty funny shit, dude. But,
Which is
oh,
Jurassic Park.
man.
That fucking guy going all a million miles an hour.
Him talking about his shit or what?
No, what was his name? I forget his name, but it was the Micro Machines advertising guy, and he talked like a million miles an hour.
Oh, you're talking about the ads. Yeah, I remember those. I used to like them because they had World War II gimmicks, So I was always interested in making like a life size game board with like how like Risk they have these little characters, but I wanted to have like a big old not life size, but like fucking 5 times bigger than the regular little toys and have like actual World War II tanks and planes and army and shit. I thought it would be pretty badass. And it was like, man, that's gonna be way too fucking big. It sounds cool, but then you think about it and you're like, nah, never mind. But anyway, fucking Son of Frankenstein, dude. We did it. We finally fucking did it. It'll be a while before we get back to Frankenstein. I wanted to do the original trilogy with you because I feel that because obviously this is the real trilogy because it's got Boris Karloff in the first three, and then after that, it's Ghost of Frankenstein, and I think the guy that plays the Wolfman, I can't think of his name right now. It's not Lon Chaney. It's Oh yeah, Lon Chaney Jr. Yeah, Lon Chaney Jr. He plays Frankenstein, and I think Ghost of Franken, and it's such a different take. I mean, I'm gonna save, of course, that shit for that review. But I was like, we have to do the classic ones, and we were just gonna do, Frankenstein, Dracula, The Invisible Man, but it was like, let's just do the classic ones because it's so much easier to compare now that you've watched them kind of within the same like 2 months together, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I gotta say too, like I threw this at you the other day, kind of at random, but I always had thought, like when I see this Boris Karloff, I always thought to myself, that show, The Munsters, the friggin' tall, and I realized, oh, that's Herman Munster, because I wasn't really a big watcher of that show, but they would always have it on like on CBS when I was a kid, and
Mm-hmm.
I said to myself, they really do look almost exactly alike, and then lo and behold, you look into it, and then the character Herman Munster is supposed to be derived from the original novel about Frankenstein and the monster.
Well, yeah, I think everyone in that is supposed to be like a little wolf, the little wolf kid, and fucking grandpa's fucking Dracula. So yeah, it's just like it's the monsters. But yeah, I remember I had saw all that before I had actually seen any of the Universal monsters because that shit was always on in the early '90s, and my mom used to love watching that shit. So y'all know where I get my fucking horror movie fucking gimmicks from. But what was I going to say about this one? But out of the three, this is definitely the most like. Well, I can't even say the most because I thinking about Bride, and Bride's usually considered like the best. But when we had talked about it, we kind of were like man, this one's a lot different than the original Frankenstein because Bride had a lot more comedic elements and more like it was
More
more
dialogue.
campy. Yeah, a lot more. Yeah, a lot more dialogue. But it had like a lot more ridiculousness. There was nothing really scary the way the first one. I mean, it's not scary for us, but I'm saying like how the you're moving your shit around. I knew you were gonna do
Oh,
it.
it doesn't. I don't know. It's
I
had
knew.
to.
I was
Well,
like, Chris can't help himself. He's gonna start wandering. But
I guess the thing is, and the thing is, I'm sitting right here too, and I just had to grab it. But Um, I think with the first Frankenstein movie, what happens is it's so limited to the concept of how they're bringing how they're creating a life, or so they think they're creating a life, and just the little minute by minute things of surgically operating the guy, and then how he comes to life, so to speak, and they use the wrong brain, and eventually starts killing people and all this stuff, and the townspeople are afraid, and it's so lost, and like it's like a very mid 19th century, what we today would call Germany. Of course, back then it was Prussia and Bavaria. But
Mm.
anyway, then you get to part two, and part two, it starts getting away from that. So you're like, okay, so now they've created this monster. This monster, this old professor of his comes to him, wants to start up a joint venture together to start creating life unto themselves. And that he was scared away by how bad it went the first time. Then he kind of gets that madness in him gets drawn into it by this old professor, and he rekindles that madness that perhaps is dangerous now. But in the process, they also create a girlfriend or wife or whatever for him. But now this is a fast forward. So this one is very like, okay, we've gotten through, we've laid the foundation, we've put up the frame of the house, we've even put up the little sideboarding and whatnot. Now the brick exterior is there, the type of shingles we want to have is there, everything is there. So you can really have a story based on what's been built in the first two.
Yeah, this one has a different director, and you could definitely feel it. The first two, um, they feel well. They're all supposed to connect, but one and two they really connect. They're like literally immediately after, and this one's supposed to be like I don't know how much. I don't know if they even say it on how long it's been. All we know is that the son of Frankenstein, Basil Rathbone, who's like a famous actor in that era. Um, with his like is over. He kind of reminds this movie reminds me of Jimmy Stewart and shit.
Well, it's fun. I'm glad you said that because when you're talking about the cast of it, let's get into that now. So we've got this film is January 13th, 1939 release date on a budget of 420,000, which by my calculation that makes it a $9.4 million budget in today's dollars. Was not able to find out how much it netted at the box office or other royalties, but it probably did fairly well. I'm sure it at least broke even at a minimum.
Mhm.
Now, like you said, Basil Rathbone is Baron Wolf von Frankenstein. Boris Karloff again is the monster, which keeps it great because you're not having that freaking Friday the 13th fucking syndrome of changing the villain actor every other film, which is great. And then you've got, like I said, Bela. This was here. Bela Lugosi as Igor, and this film really showed the range that Bela Lugosi had as an actor. More than just a theater actor, more than just Dracula and that plain Hungarian accent. Like he really played an odd character in this. He did great at it. 1939, very impressive year in cinematography. I say that because you got this movie, which the predecessor to this one really laid the tracks for fictional movies down the road. You got this movie, you got Mr. Smith Goes to Washington with, of course, our favorite Jimmy Stewart, I'm Mr. Potter, and then you've got and then you got the greatest 1939 movie of all, one of the greatest movies of all ever, period, and that is Wizard of Oz. So what a groundbreaking year 1939 is for film.
Yeah, yeah. This one for people that where Basil Rathbone looks familiar, it's because he played the fucking Sherlock Holmes in that era. I don't know if it was a TV show. I've only just seen pictures of it. I don't know if it's a TV show like series or an actual movie. But that's where he's really known for, at least what I know him for. Um, and we were talking about that. I think it was the last one. You still hadn't seen, or as of now, you still haven't seen what's it called, Young Frankenstein, right?
No, I've not.
Yeah. So whenever I don't even know if we'll do it on this show. It just depends. There's so many fucking movies to do, but this is the one where like 90% of Son of Frankenstein is all the shit from this, and one and the thing is too is that how like everyone knows Igor as Frankenstein's assistant. Well, it was Fritz, was his assistant, and now this is the real Igor. But there's no, I mean, he kind of helps out Frankenstein here, but this is what we got the Igor from Bela Lugosi. And man, if it wasn't for Bela, this film would be kind of like boring, right? Because there's the overacting of, you know, I was gonna say Jimmy Stewart, the overacting of Basil Rathbone, and the monster's not really doing shit for a while, right? And there's
Yeah,
just there's just that little annoying kid. But my favorite actors are Inspector Crow. I thought he was amazing in this shit, and Igor. You
yeah.
know, he's like he just shows up, and it's just great. But I don't know if you know you felt the same
Igor,
way
oh
about
my
them.
god. He's this weird freaking this weird freaking presence who's just there. He's overarching. He's just all omnisciently there throughout the movie, and you don't really know why. You know he's some strange character, and you know there's probably something up to no good about him. But he's just intrigued. When you see him, you're intrigued, and you're wondering. Then when you see him in his first real meaningful dialogue scene, isn't even when he meets Wolfgang von Frankenstein. Is really the most meaningful scene to me with him in it is when he's sitting in the city council, and they're
Yeah,
all those old grouchy German men, many of whom had been involved in his first. We find out that he had once been lynched unsuccessfully, and
yeah.
and all these men sitting around and they're talking about it. He's like, I do nothing wrong. I helped Doctor Frankenstein. He good man. He paid me money, and and then they're all there going, and we'll hang. And then that one fat guy, Lang, and we'll hang you again. He's all, you'll hang me. Took 8 of you last time to hang me once.
Yeah. He's not like and then he starts coughing on one of the dudes or something on them. He's like,
That's
I'm
right.
sick.
Oh my god,
But
I love it. And you see the bolt on his neck when he gets hung from the first time.
yeah, and his back's all fucked up and everything. Yeah, or like there's like a crack. There's like a crack in his neck. Yeah, is it bolts or whatever? But I think it's like his neck's broken or whatever. But my favorite part, like the only serious thing in the entire film, is when Inspector Crow. It's because the movie starts off with Basil Rathbone coming back to claim, I guess, the family heritage, or I don't even know. He's like he talks, and like I said, it's so overacting. He's like talking to his wife. I think her name's was it Amelia, or Amelia's the fucking the what
Yeah,
servant, but it's his wife that he's talking to, Elsa.
Elsa von Frankenstein.
Yeah, and he's talking. He's like, who would have known that all these, my father. The whole time he's like, he's like reciting, giving us the background, and he gets there. The whole village is like, we come to meet you, not to greet you.
Yes. Oh my god, the whole thing is they even have that city council before that. It's all, well, Baron von Frankenstein is here to claim his father's estate. He'll find only a darkened window and no one to greet him at the door.
Yeah, everyone's playing it big. Like I said, it reminds me of it's exactly what It's a Wonderful Lifestyle. Like, so, if you're not into that style, like me, I love that. You probably won't like this movie because it's so dramatic, over the top, just like Wizard of Oz and shit like that. But this kind of like even like this movie's bigger than like that style than Wizard of Oz. But that overacting just kind of you know really not just giving a fuck, just doing it like it's theater, and you have to act big on stage, and because people in the background have to see that that charisma, and they're there, but and he comes back, and the inspector goes to speak to him. He's like, well, you have a drink, sir, inspector, and he's, no, I'm good. Herr Baron. They call him Herr Baron. So his name's Wolf, but I get, well, I don't know if it's Wolf or Baron, but I know they use Baron as like a,
Oh, Baron is a title
yeah.
that goes back to royal nobility within the German system.
Yeah. That's what I was like. They call him Baron because I thought, but on here they have him as Baron von Frankenstein, Baron Wolf. But I was like, I'm pretty sure it's just Wolf. But yeah, but he goes, Herr Baron, and the Red Baron. But they're talking, and the most serious part of the film, it's because the inspector is there to like basically tell him like, don't stay here. It's I'm here to protect you from the villagers, but don't put yourself in that situation, basically, right? And
Yes.
it's so great. He starts talking about what uh, I forget the exact quote, but he starts talking about how he ran into the monster. He being pronouns, pal. he being Inspector Crow ran into the monster. I guess when he was a kid. I don't know how the time
When he
frame
was, I
was.
remember it. He talked about it. He was 10 years old, and he says, "One seldom forgets when a man's arm is ripped out from its roots."
Yeah, dude, that shit is like the way he says that arm ripped from the root, and he does because he has a fake arm, and he goes thump, like he hits the back, like the fucking pillar, and he does that, and he does that shit. And you're like, whoa, that's some Enter the Dragon shit, with the fucking gimmick hand, and just that little speech. It's like a minute long or so. It's really good because that's like the only serious part of the movie where someone's just there. They're not overacting. They're just telling a story, and like up to that point, I wasn't like when I remember first seeing it, I wasn't really hooked to it because it was kind of like, man, this is kind of because it starts off and all these years, yeah, he's there talking, and then he finally like gets you like, oh, this is kind of serious, and I like that they finally like if you were by yourself, fucking 10 o'clock at night in the dark, and that speech comes on, it gives that real fucking dark tone to it, and I liked it. But then after that, we get completely annoyed by what's it called by Peter. Peter, where are you, son? Son, and then he's all like, "I
I didn't understand why that kid would have had such like a southern accent.
will here." He starts talking like you. He starts talking like you when you get drunk and shit. Like, well, I guess I gotta go outside now. He fucking he like it just to me it just seemed like this kid's got to get his shit in, so we're gonna just like throw scenes of him saying a bunch of nonsense, and it takes so much away from the actual tone of the movie. Like I was laughing when they're there, like the next day after Crow leaves, and he's like, what are you doing, son? I'm gonna go out hunting. What are you gonna hunt? Elephants and tigers, and then he says something about boars. He says something. He's like Aunt Fanny. he goes, no, not like Aunt Fanny. And then he says something like, I sure hope I don't have teeth like that. And he goes, why not,
Ah,
son? They be too hard to clean. And everyone starts laughing. And I was like,
oh,
what
you mean
the?
like that's like
Yeah.
that's like a line like alligators are angry because they got all them teeth, they ain't got no toothbrush.
That's still one of the greatest lines in movie history. Every time it comes up, he's like, "No, Colonel Sanders, you're wrong."
Mama
it's,
said you wrong.
he said, "No, Colonel Sanders." My mom fucking. But anyway, but yeah, fucking Peter's there, and Peter gets him in a lot of trouble because later on in the movie when they're talking, he starts talking about like the big monster or like the big man that did whatever. He's like, "Can you show me
That
where
big
he's at?"
giant came down. And he gave me this book, and he's so nice. Oh, did he really?
Yeah, yeah, and he starts. That you have to have that little piece, but I didn't like Peter in this thing. It pissed me off that little kids in this era, like little kids, in any kind of movies, it's tough because the acting part. We've come a long way with Stranger Things, and even those kids are like 12 years old or whatever, and like they get a lot of kids nowadays get started real young into acting and roles and stuff. But you get to 1939, it's like what the fuck? No, there was that kid probably fucking uh, didn't have any kind of rehearsals really. It's just like, hey, all right, let's just fucking call it in the ring type shit. Um,
Probably
but
barely cognizant of what was going on. And I mean, like it's. I mean, if anything, it's amusing to hear him talk, and you get annoyed when he's outing, the monster being around in front of Mister Crow, and then when Inspector Crow's there, it's like you feel so awkward because he's going, well, you're not supposed to shake hands with your left hand, you're supposed to do it with your right hand, and then that's when you're making a man who's been through a tragedy talk about his injury, and then friggin' Baron Wolf puts him over and calls him, well, he was a war hero, son.
yeah, yeah, exactly, dude. Puts him over like a motherfucker. Um, but Igor, I think Wolf go. I forgot what Wolf's doing, but he's got his gun or what. I don't know. Is he going hunting? I forget, but he has his gun, and he goes into, I guess, into the castle and where that wreckage was and shit, and um, he sees Igor, and he's all like, I'm not going to hurt you or some bullshit. He's all like, and he shows him, the Frankenstein monster that survived again for the
Yeah.
third time, and just basically, well, what it is that Frankenstein starts reading that book. He starts reading the book in like his attic and shit, and
Yeah.
he's like, oh, and if this intrigues you and all this and that, and it's like, yeah, I mean, and me when you think about that, because it's like, you hear all these bad things that happen, to your dad because there was a monster, but then you kind of realize like, well, fuck, he brought something to life that was dead, and it's like here's all the way. You're like, well, yeah, you wouldn't be a little intrigued on understanding, and maybe being able to figure it out. And I think that's always like in our human fucking mind is that we want to try again. You know what I mean? Not just like,
Our
okay,
human underlying curiosity and the spirit of
curiosity.
humanity.
Yeah,
Yeah, the spirit to try new things. And yeah, like you said, I'm glad you brought that up. So when he reads that last testament of his father, a message from his father to him, and he's saying, if this kind of thing bothers you or scares you, tear this letter up. But if you are intrigued by this, understand you will go through. The word wasn't persecution, but you will be, disliked by those around you. So prepare yourself for that now if you decide to continue to go forward with the work I initiated. Now,
yeah,
having said that, like you said, he goes to that wreckage castle where the work had once been done. Finds Igor and points the shotgun at him like Igor, hey, don't do me any harm. He said, I mean no harm, whatever. But then he opens that secret passage, takes him to a little curvy hallway, takes him to to the monster. And when I see that, it brought me back to when he said on the train, he said, people have cursed my father's name. They even dare
mhm,
to call that monster thing all because his stupid servant put the wrong brain in there. But they
yeah.
even call that monster, and then the train voice over the intercom goes, Frankenstein.
Frankenstein, yeah. It's those little things, right? It's those little things that are done like that that are like, I don't know, so memorable, right? Because you'll never hear something like that again. Real in movies now, it's just so, I don't know. It's supposed to be like, I guess, normal in this time. Like we're just supposed to be like, oh, not really think about it. But it's so awkward all of a sudden. Frankenstein.
You just don't expect it to happen, especially not in that era.
Yeah, yeah. So um, after all that shit, the monster starts going crazy again per use because Igor basically, like, I guess, controls him or like is able to um influence him, I guess, more than Frankenstein, right? And this one, I guess.
Which I found odd because I don't feel the movie ever truly explained, other than maybe the monster's desire to have what he feels is a friend, and Igor is placing himself out there with that to him. To me is the only rational explanation why Frankenstein would be under that influence. But then you see, like you said, and Wolf von Frankenstein doesn't even realize what's really going on here, and you don't realize it as a watcher of the movie until that first fucking councilman gets ran over by a horse carriage.
Yeah, yeah, and he actually says like he's like he's I'm friend or he's friend. Um,
Yes.
uh, fucking Bela Lugosi, like I was saying earlier, like he's really the one that carries this movie because I don't know, everyone's a little too over the top and dramatic, and he's over the top. But like I don't know, he has that sense of being like evil to where like he's more evil than the fucking Frankenstein monster. You know what I mean? Because like he like knows what he's
Yes.
doing, so
Right.
he makes it. He like when he's like you're talking like I'm glad you brought up that when they were there with all the with what are they like chairmen or whatever the fuck they are. Um,
Yeah.
and he goes, "They die dead, I die live."
Really?
It's just stupid shit like that. And it's just fucking um that like it's like okay, it's so memorable. And if it wasn't um if it wasn't for him, there wouldn't be, that many quotable lines in the shit, like, except for Frankenstein.
Yeah.
It's so fucking stupid,
Oh,
man.
Igor is great. That like that. So this movie is one of those classic black and white movies that, like you said, everyone in there comes from that era where you did theater before you were on camera,
Mhm.
and everyone's got that either that very American movie actor voice or that very soft British actor movie voice. And here's Bela Lugosi, who has neither of those. Very charismatic character, has those eyes, has that look, says crazy things. It makes it a lot more interesting than just this barely talking monster walking around killing people.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Fucking dog distracted me. But what was I gonna say? But with Bella, they part of the ending part was when what's his name, Benson, uh, disappears, and that's when Crow starts looking for him, and that's when they're like, it's slowly, like that's what gets him to start looking into Frankenstein more, because Benson is his servant, and yeah, I always found it funny, like he's a servant there, and like Crow knows right away when he's fucking missing and shit, um, and that's
And
when they
But
start.
Benson's a bad. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, go ahead.
Benson, you can't forget though. Benson's a bad mofo because he had served in World War One.
He's a bad mofo. Yeah, dude. And he starts he goes missing, and that's where they, fucking he finally he finally reveals to fucking what oh, is it that Crow runs into the Frankenstein monster, and then they start fighting. All I remember is Basil Rathbone kicking him into like sulfur or whatever the fuck it is.
That freaking Tarzan swing off the rope and kick him into the sulfur pits.
It's such
That
an
was amazing.
abrupt it's such an abrupt ending, right?
You don't see that happening. You don't see that as any kind of long term thing, but it fucking worked. And then the thing that got me, but more than that, what got me was the shooting of Igor, and that just puts him down because you don't know his mortality or immortality or lack thereof is a mystery because if you survive getting lynched and then you have this kind of influence over this monster, what is the nature of your very being? Then it makes you the audience member you wonder.
Yeah. No, it's a crazy, fun, all over the place movie. We get a lot of fucking different shit. It's completely different than Bride of Frankenstein, and even though Bride of Frankenstein's a continuation of Frankenstein, those two are completely different. I'd like to hear, like, for you, like how would you rank them as far as just your, not going off anybody else's thoughts or whatever, just going off of like your enjoyment, to say, oh, hey, if someone asked you, "Hey, are those Frankenstein movies any good?" and you're like, "Oh, well, which one would you show them, and what would how would you have them, in your mind ranked, these three?"
I'm gonna rank this one as my favorite so far because the dynamic with Bela Lugosi just makes it so much more fun and interesting. Um, and man, then the council scenes, the city council scenes, and all that. That's kind of funny. That's humorous. Seeing these grouchy old men who wouldn't be able to fight their way out of a paper bag, and they think they're gonna lynch this fucking Bela Lugosi again. That's funny. But then I like part one is just it's the origin story, and it's not like part two gets a little bit crazy with that professor. Oh, I can't remember his name. And like that one lady goes, "There ain't no such name," and then this part two is, but none of them are bad. Like they're all good. It's just the thing is, I think this one is the most interesting, most intriguing, mainly because of Bela Lugosi.
Yeah. No, mine's a little bit different. I have the original as my favorite, even though I think I have more fun with this one. I just like the tone of the first one the most. Uh, but this is the one I do come back to the most, because it is like the one that, like, yeah, it's entertaining. Like, it's either like, it's like, what do you want? You want something a little bit more um like that brings that dark tone than the first one. But if, like, I'm just looking for, like, to laugh with Bella, I usually put on Son. So it's like, yeah, Son of Frankenstein and the original, they usually switch around. Like, for the longest time, Son of Frankenstein was my favorite, but I kind of, like, I don't know, just recently the original is kind of a little bit more gotten up for me. But Yeah, no, I can't argue with either of those. But yeah, my least favorite as well is Bride. That's why I always kind of like laugh that everybody puts over Bride of Frankenstein, which it's a good movie, but I'm like, I don't see it being better. It's Dr. Pretorius being better than one or three, just because it's so like I don't know. It's just wacky. I guess like is the best thing, right? After out of all the ones
Yeah.
that we saw, that it's just kind of like wacky. There's no over dramatic roles. It's just kind of like goofy shit. you
I
know?
think thank you. You put that very perfectly. I must say you really did because you made me think of a parallel there. You're right because part one is the darkest old school horror of the three,
Yeah.
and then part three is the most entertaining kind of a certain heel character drives it, and that's a lot like two franchises I'm thinking of here. You're gonna think Karate Kid because Karate Kid one is the darkest, where he's getting his ass kicked and he's going through these dark times and he overcomes it, and then Karate Kid three is badass because Terry Silver makes that movie.
Hmm.
And then same thing if you go to Nightmare on Elm Street. Nightmare on Elm Street one is the darkest because it's just like it's this Freddy who doesn't really talk except Tina, and uh, and he's just haunting people and people are scared to go to sleep and all this shit.
Don't
In
forget.
the part,
Don't forget. I'm your boyfriend now, Nancy.
oh yeah, put that to a Cuban beat, and then
Go ahead, keep talking. I like your idea where you're going with this, but keep going.
yes.
Nightmare
And then
Three.
yeah, Nightmare Three is, and again, Nightmare Two is great, but it's just very too similar. It's like continuing of the same thing in part one, but then part three, it's fun because now you've got these teenagers in this psych hospital who've been traumatized, but they team together to fight the enemy, and so it makes it fun. It makes it almost like horror turns to action.
Yeah. No, yeah, exactly. It is. That's the perfect analogy with Nightmare 1 through 3 and this 1 through 3, right? Because like you said, the first ones are that dark tone. They're the classic. It's like, do you like classic or not? Because those are the classics, right? And then the third one, it's like they take all those elements that you liked about the classic, but they added that extra element to just make it more entertaining. Like you said, the kids, the dreams are more crazy. This one, it's like we added Bella fucking Lugosi, Dracula, just with this, we added that shit with a lot more other characters. Because if you see the original Nightmare on Elm Street or Frankenstein, it seems very isolated, right? There's not too many people. There's very few kids in the original Nightmare. Frankenstein, it's
Yes.
really Igor and just they seem kind of like a down, depressing, but the good classic darkness is there. Where the third one, it's like you have so much more fun. I can just throw on Nightmare 3 whenever and just like not feel like it's bringing down the mood because it's a horror movie the way Nightmare One does, the way Frankenstein does, and it's the same thing with Son of Frank. I could always throw it on because it's so like it's a horror movie, but it's a like I can't even say feel good, but it's a more of a not as a bring you down one. Or you have these two other ones right in the middle where they have that transition. Winks at Jesse from Nightmare Two, yeah. Um, where like they kind of know that the first one was successful. They're like, but what do we do now? And it's like I like Nightmare 2. I like Bride of Frankenstein, but they're not the classic and they're not the fun one either. They're like their own little thing. So it's surprising that that Bride gets that I don't know like that nod the way I feel that it's kind of like Nightmare 2 where like yeah I like Nightmare on Elm Street 2. I really can't go back to it too much unless I'm really in the mood for that style of and they're both gay ones too now that we mention it.
Yeah, you're
they're,
right.
yeah, they're both because like they even say that is his name Colin Clive, the director?
Yes.
He's he was a gay guy, so he wanted to bring that. I think we talked about it. He wanted to bring that to Bride, and he's like he even says, "Oh, sir, Doctor Pretorius, and he is quite a queer fella." And it's like, what the fuck? and
And so
it's
is
like,
the guy who's doing that opening narration trilogue in the beginning when they're in that living room.
mhm, yeah, there was no intro in this one, right? For Son.
There wasn't. They're like, yeah, you don't have the how do you do, or you don't have the three aristocrats sitting in that living room watching the lightning storm and talking about the novel. And
Yeah, yeah, no fucking yeah. This one, like it was like right away gets into it, right? But Yeah, I had a good time. I'm glad we did these three. Me and Chris have been planning to do the trilogy for a while, but all kinds of stuff always comes up with us. We're busy people, but we wanted to bring you guys this one. We wanted to keep Master of the Universe strong and everything. So how would you rank this bad boy, Chris, out of 10?
Oh, definitely a nine, man. Because of its OG-ness, and also I thought it was very well done. And Bela Lugosi just, yeah, in my opinion, there's not enough of him in this movie. But maybe if you'd have put him in a little more, maybe it would have been overkill. But he makes the movie the movie. It snaps in your head. It pays off like, oh, so he survived the lynching, and now he's rolling over their necks with these horse carts and using. Frank, that's why the town's been talking about these continued murders, even though he's supposedly dead. You know that like it clicks, and you see him and Wolf gets his payoff in the end on Igor and on Frankenstein, and you see a man who seems like he might be distrusting of Mr. Frankenstein or Baron Frankenstein, but in the end, Inspector Crow was there to help, and he did. So great movie, white meat baby face ending. The fans go home happy, but as we know, the story is yet to die.
Yeah, yeah. Ghost of Franken. Like I said, we'll end up doing that one probably like a year from now because we have so much other shit to get to. I just want to leave my rating. Yeah, I definitely give this one a 9 as well out of 10. I think it's one of the best Universal horror movies. There's only I mean there I can't wait to talk about like Creature because I haven't seen it in forever. Creature from the Black Lagoon, The Wolfman. We did The Invisible Man. I ask you this like every other month, but we've done that one, right?
We have not yet done that.
We haven't. Okay, we just did Dracula and then the Frankenstein's. Is that what it is?
That's exactly what it is. But we got to do
Okay.
Invisible Man.
Yeah, so like off of memory, the best of the best is Invisible Man, The Wolf Man, and Creature from the Black Lagoon, which it's a little bit different, but yeah, this one's like just a hair below those other ones. Invisible Man's probably the all time great, but um, I know
It's
last time
funny.
me and hmm?
Creature from the Black Lagoon. I'm a big mob movie mark, and I love Donnie Brasco. And there's this one scene where they're playing poker, and this one guy goes, "I got the fucking you got a hand. I got the fucking creature from the Black Lagoon's fucking claw."
That's so great. Because in the movie they find an actual hand or the claw, and then like in the movie, yeah, it's like they're like, "Oh, what kind of creature is this?" And and all it's like, "Oh, it's supposed to be a man, and this a man from thousands of years or millions or whatever it is, right?" But it's good shit. Got the fucking creature from the Black Lagoon's claw. That's funny as shit. But we had talked about, trying to do different shit this year. Like we're still 90% horror. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, does the football fucking field hand gimmick. We were gonna do the Wizard of Oz next, right? We had talked about
We
it.
were.
Okay. So for those of you, wanting to know, dude, and for those of you who want to get over, dude, we're going to do the Wizard of Oz next. And I don't see that being any less than 8 hours of worth of podcasting, but we're going to cut it down to probably close to an hour. But because that's one of Chris's, like when me and Chris first met, we were like, I was like, wow, someone has the same love for the Wizard of Oz as I do. It's such a random, weird thing to be into, at least for me. But we're going to be doing that one next. Are you excited, Chris, or what?
Very. I grew up with that movie from age 5 on. So
Yeah, we've been talking about it for years too. We're gonna fucking do this year. It's gonna be recorded a couple of weeks in advance. Uh, what's it called? It's a Wonderful Life, dude. We're gonna finally get to it, dude. We're gonna finally get to It's a Wonderful Life. That one too. I'm gonna have to write down all the quotes, and we're gonna be putting on our Christmas outfits and doing our best impressions of Jimmy Stewart and fucking that one motherfucker that's always angry. What's his name, Mister What?
Lionel Barrymore,
Yeah, well, that's the
Mr.
actor's
Potter,
name, but yeah, but what's his name in the movie?
Mr. Potter.
Yeah, Larry Barrymore. Yeah, not with my money. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this shit, and me and CJ will see you on the next one.
Man, you got to be shitting me. That mother's strong.
Peace.
See?